This is Marty with FLIR Security's TCX Training Department, and we're here today to show you some of the new functions we've added to 8.0, and we'll find that right here on our physical view in the System menu. If you look at the top up there next to the General tab, you can actually see the two new tabs. The first one, System Security, the second one, Edge Security. Now you can see if we take a look at the System Security tab right here, it's broken up into sections, and if you look at the bottom sections, the user password rules are kind of the same as they've always been. We've just moved them to this particular tab now to make it easy to find the security settings. Right here is a load TLS certificate, which would be able to secure the connection between the transcoder and the web server, both which you could see in the navigation tree on the bottom. But up at the top right here for Edge security settings, this has to do with the connection between the cameras and the system itself. And if you see the top one, it has to do with new cameras. So if I were to check that and save it, it would have nothing to do with these cameras over here because they exist in the system. This one here in the middle you can see is block communications if the connection is not secure. Now, we kind of got to go to the Edge Security tab to sort of show you what that means, but you can see the 4 cameras I have in the system here. And if I were to click on one of them here, you can look at the bottom, and you can see there's a security warning. The only one in here is it does not have a user-defined password. But that's primarily because there is no certificate being used. As you can see there in the second column next to the secured section, here is the secured section, no, and of course this would be the certificate that was required. So if I were to use this and actually block it, simply because there are no certificates loaded yet, if I were to block the communication now between anything that's not secure and hit save, we can actually see that now that all of the connections have been blocked, and if I highlight them it tells you exactly why, and it's because it's not been secured. So how do we actually secure it? Well, that's one thing we're going to need to show, but you can also see here that the password thing, it will show towards the end as well. So let's uncheck that, bring our cameras back by hitting save here. And now if I come back to my Edge Security tab, you can see they're all at least connected. But as we were mentioning before, securing them is something that we're going to have to show you right here. Now, this last one right here talks about unsecured or untrusted certificates, which means you can have a certificate to secure it. But if it is self-signed, that's primarily when you'll see the non-trusting of that certificate. So if I were to highlight my 55 camera here, this is an actual aerial camera. So let's go ahead and go and take a look at the aerial camera. In the interface itself. Now each camera has their own way to set up the SSL or the secure connection. So if we go to the settings menu up at the top, you can see if I come over to the left and under the basic configuration, under the system, we want to come down to our network settings, which you can see right here. Now, with this particular camera, there's a couple of settings we need to make. One is in the General Settings tab, and if you come all the way to the bottom down here, you can see that we do have Enable SSL. However, if I were to turn this on right now, it would say, well, you need to have a certificate first before you can enable it. So that's what we need to do on this camera in particular, and that's all the way down here in the SSL connection. And if you come to this, you can see right here, I have no certificate at the moment. But we can take care of that right quick and just do a self-signed certificate. Now again, there are other certificates that are submitted and verified and stuff, and you could use those if your company or your customer has one of those. But this will secure the connection at least with our own self-signed certificate. So I'm just going to put in some information here. Organization, I actually live in North Carolina, so that's my province, and I am in the training department. That's the unit name for the organization. I live in Raleigh, it's the capital of North Carolina, and I'll put in my address right here as well. Now, as I finish this, and you can see down here the common name is it could be a host name or the IP address. I'll just use the IP address. This is 55, as you can see up at the top. And then we simply come down here and generate that certificate. It takes a second or two for it to apply to the camera, and if we give it another second or two, we should see it being updated. Now you can see it down here at the bottom. We do have the certificate that's actually been created in the camera. So now we'll go back to our General tab, which we saw before, and we will enable that SSL setting. Now again, not all cameras do it the same way. This is just this particular one. I've actually loaded another certificate into the Quasar Gen 2 camera, my big 4K camera, which you see at the top here. That's the 50 camera. But I didn't want to have to make you guys sit through that twice. So if you look right here, I'm just going to notice it doesn't say anything about certificates because I haven't tried to set the security mode. So let's go ahead and do that. And again, this is that aerial camera that we just set up with the certificate. And as you can see, it's quite easy and it has succeeded. Nice and easy. Now again, as I mentioned before, all of these type of settings apply to specific things on cameras. What I'm getting at is you can see I have two other FLIR cameras, the top one being the Quasar Gen 2. This one here, the third one from the bottom, or from the top, is actually an IOI camera. And this one here is my 4K camera. So now this one, as I mentioned before, I've already set up a certificate in it as well. It's a little bit easier. You only have to do one step. And as you can see, that one has been secured. Now I noted I was mentioning on the IOI camera, the 52, I do not have a certificate set up. And so I'm not going to secure that one. And on the Axis camera, I don't even have it. But notice down at the bottom, user-defined password is another way we can secure cameras. On this particular camera, and I want to show you this on two different ones, this is my aerial camera. This one does have the option to be able to do this on this camera. And as you can see how easy it is. Now this does take sometimes 30 seconds, 45 seconds or so. It should be just about there now. I edited this video just to make it a little bit quicker. And as you can see, it now has succeeded. However, if you go up to the top, this is my Quasar Gen 2 4K camera. This one currently does not have this option, so you can see it's been secured. But if I try and change its password, which I'll do with the same one that I just used before, you can see that it immediately fails. Now that's just because that's that particular type of camera. As we flush this system out with the edge security, I'm assuming that all of our cameras will eventually be able to be not only added a certificate, but also changing a password. But notice right here, this is another thing. This is an untrusted certificate, as you can see. And this is what I mentioned before. Untrusted generally means self-signed. So if I were to come down and use this third block right now, and I were to block communications if it's untrusted, well, you'll see what happens there with that last camera. It's now blocked. Actually, both of them are blocked, the 4K cameras as well, for the same reason. It's got a certificate, and it's been secured, but it has an untrusted certificate because it was created by whoever has access to that camera. And finally, we want to show, well, let's go ahead and uncheck this box here for the blocked communications and bring our cameras back online. There's one final thing I do want to show in the Edge Security tab here. And notice we do have a certificate here, and we were able to change the password on this camera, so both of the security warnings have gone away. But if you look at this one here, this is my IOI camera. I do not have a certificate on it, and I try to apply the security mode, and it fails because I need a certificate, like you saw me do in the aerial camera. Now the Axis camera, as you can see here, none of the buttons up on the top even light up at all. Notice the buttons change. If I touch the FLIR camera, they light up. On the Axis camera, they don't.